They say saving a life is the greatest thing a person can do, but no one ever tells you what happens when the people you save pretend you never existed. For a long time, I thought I understood kindness, that if you gave enough, cared enough, loved enough, it would come back to you somehow. I was wrong. Because the day I gave away a piece of myself to save someone else's life was the day I lost my own peace forever. Every scar has a story. Mine begins in a hospital room, a cold, white place that smelled like fear and disinfectant. I still remember the quiet hum of the machines, the sterile light, and that hospital bracelet with my name on it. I thought it represented hope. Now, it just reminds me of everything I lost. But let me take you back to before everything went wrong, back to when I met her. Her name was Lena. She was new at the office, confident, warm, and full of life. She had this way of making everyone laugh, like she carried sunshine in her voice. I was the opposite, quiet, reserved, the kind of guy who stayed late and avoided attention. I'd been through my share of disappointments, but something about her made me want to believe again. At first, she was just a coworker. We'd talk during coffee breaks, joke about bad deadlines, and laugh at how terrible the office snacks were. But little by little, those small conversations started meaning more to me than they should have. She'd tell me about her dreams, her struggles, her love for her father, a man she said was her whole world. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't love at first sight. It was slow, soft, the kind of connection that sneaks up on you before you even realize it's there. One evening, as everyone else packed up to leave, I noticed her sitting at her desk, staring blankly at her phone. Her hands were shaking. I asked if something was wrong. She looked up at me, her eyes red, and whispered, "It's my dad." I'll never forget that look, a mix of fear and helplessness. She said he'd been rushed to the hospital. His liver was failing. The doctor said he needed a transplant, and fast. She tried to smile through her tears, saying, "I'm sorry, I shouldn't be dumping this on you." But she wasn't dumping it on me. She was breaking right in front of me. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about her, about how scared she looked, about how her world might fall apart any moment. And I knew I couldn't just sit by and do nothing. The next morning, without telling her, I went to the hospital. I asked the doctors if I could be tested as a potential donor. They explained the risks, how complicated it was, how painful recovery could be, how I didn't have to do it. But I didn't care. I just wanted her father to live. A few days later, the results came in. I was a perfect match. It felt unreal, like fate had chosen me for this one impossible chance to make a difference. When I told her, she couldn't stop crying. She hugged me like I had just brought her father back to life. "Daniel," she whispered, "you don't have to do this." But I meant it when I said I want to. She tried to talk me out of it. She told me it was too much, that it was dangerous. But there was something in her eyes, that quiet mix of hope and desperation, that made me certain. I told her, "If I can save him, I will. You don't have to say anything more." A week later, we were both at the hospital. Her father was in critical condition. I remember lying on the hospital bed, looking at the ceiling lights and thinking, maybe this is what love is supposed to feel like, doing something that matters even if no one ever sees it. She held my hand before the surgery. Her voice was soft. "You're saving my dad's life. I'll never forget this." And I believed her. When I woke up, the pain was unbearable, but so was the relief. Her father had survived. The doctors called it a miracle. Lena was by my side, her eyes full of tears, thanking me over and over. Her father called me a hero. For the first time in a long time, I felt seen. I felt like I mattered. I spent weeks recovering, and during that time, Lena visited every day. She'd bring food, flowers, small gifts. We'd talk about life, the future, everything we wanted to do when things got back to normal. I thought this was it, the start of something beautiful. But somewhere deep inside, a quiet thought started to whisper, one I kept pushing away. What if this feeling doesn't last? What if kindness fades once the crisis ends? Still, I ignored it. I didn't want to believe that people could forget something like this. I told myself that no matter what, she would remember what I did for her. But I was wrong.
I didn't know it then, but the day I offered a piece of my body to save her father was the day I gave away a piece of my soul, too. Because when you love someone that deeply, you don't count the cost. You just give until there's nothing left of you to give. And sometimes that's exactly when they leave. The doctor's words echoed in my head for days. You're a perfect match. Perfect. That single word both thrilled and terrified me. I'd never done anything like this before. I wasn't brave. I wasn't a hero. Just a man who cared too much for someone who had become his world. I remember sitting alone that night, staring at my reflection in the dark window. My mind was racing, but my heart was calm. If I can save him, she won't lose the only family she has. They told me about the risks, the pain, the long recovery. They said, you could change your mind any time. But I didn't even hesitate. I couldn't. I signed the papers with shaking hands and a strange, quiet smile. The next morning, I called Lena. My voice was soft, steady. Your dad's going to be okay, I told her. She didn't understand at first. Then I said it. I'm the match. For a moment, there was only silence. Then her breath hitched. Daniel, you can't, you shouldn't. This is too much. But I could hear the hope in her voice, buried under the fear. I said, if I can do something good, why wouldn't I? She came to see me that evening. Her eyes were red, but she smiled through the tears. I don't know how to thank you, she whispered. I just shrugged and said, just promise me he'll get better. The days that followed moved like a dream. Tests, signatures, medical briefings. I floated through all of it, my body there, but my thoughts miles away. I wasn't afraid for myself. I was afraid something might go wrong for him. The night before the surgery, Lena sat beside my bed. The hospital lights were dim, and her voice trembled when she said, "You're risking everything for my dad." I smiled. He's your father. And you. You mean more to me than you know. She squeezed my hand, trying not to cry. You're saving his life, Daniel. I'll never forget this. Those words felt like a promise. I wanted to believe they were true. Morning came too soon. The nurse placed a wristband on my arm, checked my pulse, and said softly, "You're doing something extraordinary." But in that moment, it didn't feel extraordinary. It felt right. As they wheeled me into the bright white corridor, I saw Lena one last time. She waved, tears spilling down her cheeks. I mouthed, "It'll be okay." Then everything faded into lights and voices. They said it was risky, but I couldn't imagine losing her father. Those were my last thoughts before the anesthesia pulled me under. Time blurred. Somewhere in the distance, I heard the steady beep of machines. I remember a soft voice calling my name, a hand brushing mine, warmth returning to my fingers. When I opened my eyes, the world was hazy, but she was there. Lena. Tears ran down her face as she whispered, "You did it! You saved him!" I wanted to speak, but my throat was dry. All I managed was a weak smile. She gripped my hand tighter, saying it again, "You saved him, Daniel." And for the first time in weeks, I felt peace. The pain was real, every breath, every movement, but behind it was this quiet joy. I'd done something that mattered. The next few days passed in a blur of white coats and checkups. Each time Lena came in, her smile grew brighter. She brought me soup I couldn't eat, stories to keep me awake, and a lightness that made the room feel less cold. Her father recovered faster than anyone expected. The first time I saw him after the surgery, he took my hand in both of his and said, "You saved me, son." I didn't know how to respond. I just nodded because the lump in my throat wouldn't let me speak.
That moment, I'll never forget it. For a while, it felt like I'd become part of their family. We'd sit together in the hospital garden, watching the sunset, while Lena teased her dad for eating too much pudding. They'd laugh, and for the first time, I wasn't an outsider. I belonged. Sometimes Lena would look at me with this deep gratitude, almost guilt. She'd say, "I don't know how to ever repay you." And I'd tell her, "You already did." Because honestly, I didn't want repayment. I just wanted them to be happy. There's a strange thing that happens when you give so much of yourself. You start to believe that love and goodness will always come back to you. I believed that too. When I finally left the hospital, weak but healing, Lena hugged me goodbye. "You're family now," she said softly. "You'll always be part of us." Her words wrapped around me like a promise I could hold on to. And as I walked out into the sunlight that day, I truly thought this was the beginning of something beautiful. Maybe, just maybe, life was finally about to give back what I'd given away. At first, everything felt perfect. Lena's father was recovering, her smile was back, and life felt lighter. I visited them often, bringing fruit baskets or just company. Every time I saw them laughing together, it reminded me why I had done it, why I had given so much. For a while, I thought maybe this was what happiness looked like. Quiet, steady, real. But happiness has a strange way of fading before you even notice it's gone. It started small. Lena would cancel plans at the last minute. Her messages became shorter, her calls less frequent. Where she once wrote long paragraphs, she now sent a single line. "Sorry, been busy." I told myself she needed time. Her father was still healing, maybe life was just getting hectic. But deep down, I felt it. A shift. A distance. Weeks turned into months, and that distance grew wider. When I visited the hospital to check on her father, she seemed distracted. She smiled, but it wasn't the same smile. It felt polite, distant, the kind you give a stranger. One afternoon, I dropped by unannounced with flowers. I thought it might brighten their day. As I walked up the hallway, I heard voices from the next room, Lena's father and her aunt. He said quietly, "We owe him too much already. It's uncomfortable. I wish he'd just move on." I froze. For a second, I thought I misheard. Move on? That sentence cut deeper than any wound from surgery. The same man who once called me son now sounded burdened by my existence. I didn't go inside that day. I just left the flowers at the door and walked away. After that, things changed completely. Lena stopped replying altogether. When I tried to visit, her father said she was out. When I called, she wouldn't pick up. I told myself maybe she just needed space. Maybe seeing me reminded her of everything painful they'd been through. But as days turned into weeks, that hope slowly died. Then one morning at work, someone mentioned that Lena had quit. Just like that. No goodbye, no message, not even a note on her desk. She was gone. I remember staring at her empty chair for a long time, wondering what I'd done wrong. How could someone who once looked at you with tears of gratitude just vanish like you meant nothing? I tried calling her again.
Once, twice, 10 times. No answer. Eventually, I stopped. But the silence was unbearable. It was like being erased from a story you helped write. One evening, unable to let go, I searched her name online. And there she was, smiling in a photo I'd never seen before. A new city, a new job, a man beside her, his arm around her shoulders. They looked happy, genuinely happy. I stared at that picture for a long time. My heart felt heavy, not because she moved on, but because she did it so easily, as if what happened between us had never existed. I remembered the hospital room, her tears, her words, "You're family now. I'll never forget this."
But she did forget. And I realized sometimes it's not betrayal that hurts the most. It's the quiet erasure. When people rewrite their lives and remove you from every chapter. I gave her father a second life, and she erased me from theirs. I thought the silence was the worst part, but I was wrong. The truth was worse. It didn't just hurt, it hollowed me out. It started on a normal morning at work. I'd been dragging myself through the days, pretending everything was fine, even though every message she didn't send felt like another goodbye. Then a coworker leaned over my desk with a grin and said, "Hey, did you see? Lena got engaged." The words hit me like a punch to the chest. Engaged. I tried to smile, to act casual, but my voice cracked when I said, "Oh, really?" He nodded, scrolling through his phone. "Yeah, she posted it last night. Big party and everything. You should see it. Looks like a fairy tale." When he walked away, I just sat there staring at my blank computer screen. My hands were shaking. My heart was pounding so hard it hurt. I opened my phone and searched her name. And there it was. Her smiling face, dressed in white, surrounded by people cheering, clapping, showering her with love. Her father was there too. The same man whose life I helped save. He looked healthy, radiant, alive. They were all celebrating. And me? I wasn't even a shadow in that story. Caption after caption read, "A miracle recovery, a new beginning, a love story that survived everything." But my name wasn't anywhere. Not a single mention of what I did, of the part I played in that miracle. They told the world their story, but cut me out of it completely. I kept scrolling, my eyes blurring with tears I refused to let fall. There were photos of Lena and her fiancé smiling, toasting, dancing. Everyone in the comments wrote, "What a beautiful couple. They deserve all the happiness." And all I could think was, I gave them this happiness. I gave her father the life to see this day. I gave her the chance to smile again. And yet, she looked happier than ever, like I had never existed. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in the dark, my mind replaying everything. The surgery, her tears, her promises. I pulled my shirt up and looked at the scar across my side. It was faint now, but still there. The one thing that proved it had all been real. The only thing they couldn't erase. I ran my fingers over it, remembering the pain, the fear, the hope, and I whispered to myself, was it worth it? I didn't have an answer. Days passed, but the storm inside me only grew louder. Finally, I broke. I couldn't stay silent anymore. I wrote her one last message. It wasn't angry, just honest. "Lena, I'm happy your father is doing well. I'm glad you found love, but I just want to understand, why did you erase me? Did what I did mean nothing to you?" I waited. Hours turned into a day. Then my phone buzzed. It was her. For a moment my heart lifted. Maybe,
just maybe she'd explain, maybe she'd apologize, maybe she still cared. But her message was short, cold. Please stop contacting me. We've moved on. Thank you for everything. That was it. No emotion, no kindness, just finality.
I read it over and over, hoping I'd misunderstood. But no, it was clear. To her, I wasn't part of her story anymore. I was just a chapter she wanted to close. I sat there, staring at that message until the words blurred. My chest felt heavy, like something inside me had cracked open. For the first time, I realized the truth. You can give someone everything, your time, your heart, even a piece of your body, and they can still choose to forget you. That night, I sat by the window, city lights flickering below, the phone still in my hand. Anger started to mix with the pain, quiet but burning. Not the kind of anger that lashes out, the kind that stays inside, deep, simmering. They took my kindness, I whispered, and buried it like it never happened. And as I sat there in the dark, I made myself a silent promise. If the world had forgotten what I did, I would make sure they remembered. For weeks I disappeared. Not from the world, but from myself. My apartment turned into a cage. The curtains stayed closed, the dishes piled up, and the air felt heavy, thick with silence. Everywhere I looked, there were reminders of what I'd lost. The hospital bills I hadn't opened, the photo of us on my desk, the faint ache near my scar that never really went away. I stopped answering calls. I stopped meeting friends. People said time heals everything, but time only reminded me how forgotten I was. I thought kindness was supposed to make you feel proud, but now it just made me feel small. Some nights I'd sit on the floor with the lights off, staring at nothing. I'd think about Lena's message, "Please stop contacting me. We've moved on." And every time I replayed those words, they cut a little deeper. Maybe I should have moved on too. But how do you move on from something that still lives inside you, literally? Then one night, everything changed. I was scrolling aimlessly through my phone when an ad popped up. It was for a charity event, a campaign to raise awareness for organ donation. The headline read, "Real stories, real heroes. Share your journey, inspire others." At first, I almost ignored it, but something about those words, "share your journey," hit me hard. Maybe it was the first time in months that I felt seen. I sat there staring at that ad, and a thought came to me. Maybe my story could still mean something, even if it broke me. The next morning, I called the number. My voice shook as I spoke to the organizer. She sounded kind, warm. When she asked if I wanted to share my story, I hesitated. I wasn't sure if I was ready to reopen that wound. But then I thought, if I stay silent, they win. If I speak, maybe someone else will understand what it really means to give. So I said yes. The following days, I started writing my speech. It wasn't easy. Every word felt like walking barefoot over broken glass. I wrote about the surgery, the fear, the pain, but mostly I wrote about what came after, how people forget, how gratitude fades, and how silence can hurt more than any wound. There was a moment halfway through when I stopped and stared at the page. The words blurred as tears filled my eyes, but I kept writing.
"This isn't revenge," I wrote. "It's truth, and truth is louder than silence." I didn't want pity. I didn't want anger. I just wanted honesty. I wanted people to see what kindness costs and how easily it's forgotten. The night before the event, I couldn't sleep. I sat by the window again, the city lights flickering outside like distant memories. For the first time in months, I didn't feel broken. I just felt awake. Maybe this was what strength looked like. Not shouting, not blaming, but standing tall after being torn apart. When morning came, I put on a plain white shirt, folded my speech neatly into my jacket pocket, and took a last look at the apartment that held all my pain. Then I walked out the door.
I didn't know what would happen next, but for the first time since everything fell apart, I felt ready to face the world again, not as the man who was erased, but as the man who refused to disappear. Because sometimes, the most powerful revenge isn't loud, it's silent. It's choosing to rise when no one expects you to. And that was exactly what I was about to do. I stood behind the curtain, heart pounding like it wanted to escape my chest. It had been months since I'd spoken in front of anyone. Months since I'd even been seen. The organizer gave me a small nod. "Whenever you're ready." I looked out at the crowd, faces I didn't know, waiting for a story they hadn't heard yet. My palms were sweating, my throat dry. For a second, I thought about walking away. But then I remembered the nights I spent in silence, the pain I carried alone, and the scar that would never fade. I took a deep breath and stepped onto the stage. The lights were bright, almost blinding. I stood there for a moment, frozen, before I began to speak. My voice trembled at first. "I gave a part of myself to save a life," I said quietly. The room fell completely still. I expected nothing in return, except honesty. A hush swept through the audience. I could feel hundreds of eyes fixed on me. I told them about the hospital, the surgery, the sleepless nights, about how kindness had turned into silence, about how gratitude had slowly disappeared. I didn't say any names. I didn't have to. I just told the truth. I continued, "They say doing good always comes back to you, but sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes you give everything you have, and all you get in return is emptiness. But even then, it doesn't mean you were wrong to give, because what you give says more about you than what they take." By then, my voice had stopped shaking. It was steady, strong. I could see people wiping their eyes, leaning forward, hanging on every word. I said, "When I signed those papers to become a donor, I thought I was saving a life. I didn't know I was also saving myself from becoming like them. I lost people I loved, but I found something stronger: truth." I paused, letting the silence carry the weight of my words. Then I said softly, "And truth has a way of finding people, even when you stay silent." When I finished, no one moved for a few seconds. Then the room erupted into applause, not loud, but heavy, emotional, real. Some people stood, others cried. I felt something shift inside me. Not pride, not revenge, peace. After the event, people came up to me, strangers with tears in their eyes, thanking me for my honesty, calling me brave. I smiled, but inside, I was quiet. That night, I went home and uploaded the recording online. I didn't think much of it. I wasn't chasing attention. I just wanted my truth to exist somewhere beyond my walls. But the next morning, my phone wouldn't stop ringing. Messages, notifications, emails, thousands of them. The video had gone viral overnight. People were sharing it everywhere.
calling it the speech of a broken heart that healed itself. Comments flooded in. This story changed how I see kindness. He didn't lose, he rose. Some people don't deserve your light, but shine anyway. Then something unexpected happened. People began connecting the dots. Someone recognized the timeline. Someone else remembered a local family story about a miracle liver transplant. It didn't take long. Soon, everyone knew.
Articles appeared online. Reporters started reaching out. Lena's name began to surface, softly at first, then everywhere. I didn't mention her. I didn't accuse her. But the truth did what truth always does. It found its way. Her perfect life began to crumble. Her social media accounts vanished overnight. People started asking questions. Is this the same man who saved your father? Her fiancé confronted her. Her friends turned silent. She had built her life on a story that wasn't hers, and the truth had finally caught up. I didn't celebrate it. I didn't need to. One evening, I sat by my window, watching the city lights below, and whispered, I never named them. I didn't have to. The truth has its own way of finding people. And that night, for the first time in what felt like forever, I slept peacefully. It wasn't revenge. It was justice. Quiet, honest, and pure. And it didn't just expose them, it freed me. Weeks passed after the speech, and life finally began to feel quiet again. The noise faded. The messages slowed down, and for once, the silence didn't hurt. It felt peaceful. I went back to my routine. Morning coffee, evening walks, the same lonely apartment that once felt suffocating, but now felt like mine again. There were moments I'd think about her, about Lena, and wonder if she ever thought about me, but I didn't hold on to that thought anymore. Some things are better left in the past. Then one morning, I found an envelope slipped under my door. No name, no return address, just my own, written in shaky handwriting. I stared at it for a long time before opening it. Inside was a letter from her father. His words were trembling, uneven, the kind of writing that carries more emotion than ink. He wrote, Daniel, I don't expect forgiveness. I just needed you to know the truth. My heart tightened as I read on. He said that after the surgery, guilt had eaten at them both. They didn't know how to face me. He wrote, every time you visited, it reminded us of what we owed you and how we could never repay it. So we pushed you away, not out of hate, but out of shame. He said Lena took it the hardest, that she couldn't bear to see me after everything. She left the country, trying to start over somewhere new. His final lines were simple. You saved my life, Daniel, and I ruined yours in return. I'm sorry. I will carry that regret until my last day. I sat there reading those words again and again, until the paper blurred through my tears. For a moment, I didn't know what to feel. Sadness? Relief? Anger? Maybe all of it, all at once. Because deep down, I had always wondered why they did it, why people could turn cold after being shown such warmth. And now I knew. It wasn't cruelty, it was guilt. That didn't make it right, but it made it human. I folded the letter gently and placed it on my table beside my old hospital tag, the one that still had my name, faded and wrinkled from the day of the surgery. I sat back and smiled faintly, not out of joy, but peace. Forgiving them didn't erase my pain, but it freed me from it. It reminded me that sometimes forgiveness isn't about others. It's about choosing to stop carrying the weight of what broke you. As the sunlight filled my room, I looked at that letter one last time and whispered to myself, "It's finally over." And for the first time since it all began, I truly believed it.
They say time heals all wounds, but I've learned it's not time that heals, it's acceptance. For a long time, I thought kindness was a promise, that if you gave enough, you'd receive love in return. But now I know kindness isn't a transaction, it's a mirror. It shows you who others truly are, and sometimes who you truly are too. People think kindness always brings love. It doesn't. Sometimes it brings silence. Sometimes it brings pain. And sometimes it brings peace. As I stepped outside that morning, the air felt different, lighter somehow. The world was still the same, but I wasn't. The clouds were slowly moving apart, and sunlight poured through like it had been waiting for the right moment. I took a deep breath and smiled. I gave life, I whispered to myself, and in losing them, I found mine again. Because that's what kindness does. It breaks you open, but it also rebuilds you. It teaches you that not every story ends with a thank you. Some just end with growth. I walked down the street, the letter still in my pocket, the past finally behind me. There was no anger left, only peace, and a quiet gratitude for the lessons I never asked for, but somehow needed. And as the music swelled softly in the background of my thoughts, I looked up and said the words I'd wanted to say all along. You don't need everyone to remember what you did. You just need to remember who you became because of it. If you've ever been hurt after doing something good, if someone took your kindness for granted, don't let it turn your heart cold. Let it make you wiser, stronger, and softer all at once. Because one act of kindness, even when forgotten, still changes the world. And maybe, just maybe, that's why you were meant to do it. If this story touched your heart, share it. Some people out there need this reminder that kindness is never wasted.